All right, here we go with section 6 and your focus question. Prior to September 11th, 2001, Samuel P. Huntington published a book called The Clash of Civilizations and the Remaking of the World Order in 1996. Though commonly misinterpreted, the book envisioned a conflict between authoritarian Muslim states and a freedom loving United States. For many Americans, this was a simple way of viewing the 9/11 attacks as a Muslim attack on America. Though political leaders insisted that the fight against terrorism was not a fight against Islam, many Americans felt it difficult to separate the two, even though most American Muslims were as appalled by the attacks as their fellow countrymen. September 11th transformed the international and domestic situation and Bush's presidency. Popular patriotism, not orchestrated by the government or private groups, spread through the nation. Popular trust in the government rose, and public servants such as firefighters and police officers became national heroes. After 2 decades of anti government rhetoric, the nation felt a renewed sense of common social purpose. The administration benefited from this change, and Bush's popularity soared. Americans looked to the federal government, and especially the president, for reassurance, leadership, and action. Bush seized the opportunity and, like previous presidents, made freedom the nation's rallying cry. In an address before a joint session of Congress only a few days after September 11th, Bush said that freedom and fear are at war, and that the nation's enemies had attacked the United States because they hate our freedoms. At this speech, Bush declared a few foreign policy principles, soon known as the Bush Doctrine. The U.S. would launch a war on terrorism, but unlike previous wars, this war had a vaguely defined enemy, terrorist groups around the world that might threaten the United States or its allies, and no timetable for victory. The U.S. government would not distinguish between terrorists and the governments that harbored them, and it demanded that other nations in the world either ally themselves with the United States or prepare for war. Bush demanded that Afghanistan, which was ruled by a group of Islamic fundamentalists called the Taliban, to surrender Osama bin Laden, who had a base in that country. When the Taliban refused in early October 2001, the United States launched airstrikes on their strongholds. Bush called the operation in Afghanistan Enduring Freedom. By the end of 2001, U.S. bombing and ground fighting by anti Taliban forces drove the regime from power during the war in Afghanistan. A new government, friendly to and dependent on the United States, took its place. But the new government never fully established control over the country. In 2021, with polls showing that most Americans supported an end to the war, President Joseph Biden withdrew remaining U.S. troops. Quickly, the U.S. backed government collapsed and the Taliban retook control of Afghanistan. So that's the end of section 6. We'll be back for section 7.